Hello, Instagram followers. Jonnie Bee here, also known as the new published author of the book titled God's Gift to You, Book 1, where I talk about not just my story, but I share the story of the other children that is involved. As I stated, my mother had 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys, by 3 different men involved. And all adults at that time in Boston in the 70s and in the 80s were abusing street drugs, which led them to horrifically, physically and sexually abusing the children. Some of those children never made it out of these neighborhoods. I also share their story. I speak for the ones who are no longer here to speak for themselves. But that's not what this video is about. I want to talk to you guys about some things. So, I have been recently sharing about a relationship that I had with a certain young man that I met along the way. And this particular person at one point in our lives together asked me, was I bipolar? Obviously, this person knows nothing about mental health diseases, so we're just going to educate some people, okay? 1, I was never diagnosed with bipolar throughout my life. 2, because of my horrific childhood, where I share with you guys stories about how I had to physically fist fight grown men twice my age, twice my size, twice my strength and stamina. I'm talking at the ages of 11, 12, 13, 14 years old, where I sustained some blunt force impact to my head before my head was fully developed, leaving me with long-term lasting medical concerns. I had to go through extensive therapy and counseling to address the things that took place in my childhood and how they affected me over the years. I now have to take mental health meds to treat my mental health illness, which is depression, anxiety, and panic attacks. The anxiety and the panic attacks stemmed from being that little girl in those moments when I had to fight those grown men. My mind went into panic mode because I've seen these adults take children's lives. So when these adults were being physical with me, I ended up in that fight or flight mode. I ended up having panic attacks. I ended up having anxiety attacks because as a little girl, I lived in constant fear for my life. And even though I'm not that little girl anymore, because through the years, that little girl grew up. Through the years, that little girl had to address some issues that stemmed from her childhood. I've had to learn how to manage my signs and symptoms of my mental health disease, which is depression, panic attacks, and anxiety attacks. My depression states from people's poor behaviors towards me. My depression stems from even today when I meet people who, for whatever reason, are not healthy, because I'm going to tell you, the same adults that I talk about in my book, some of those adults are still walking around on this earth today, still causing harm to people as they go, lying, cheating, manipulating. Obviously, some things happen in these people's lives that they never identified. they never acknowledged and they never addressed. So they're still walking around carrying their perspectives throughout life. Whatever happened to them in their lives, they're walking around, they're interacting with people, and they're still carrying all those things that they never identified or acknowledged or addressed. And they're dumping that stuff on other people as they go. Because I have knowledge about certain things in life, try to understand and have compassion for others. Try to love other people despite of who they are. And in doing so, I stayed in position for these people to continue their poor behavior towards me, to continue to abuse me. Sometimes our love for people blind us to who they really are. And the longer we stay forgiving them over and over and over, the more damage and harm that they're doing to us. So some people will see me as a loving, kind, spiritual in nature, okay? And they'll get that soft and that gentle side of me. But now I'm going to teach you about triggers. See, some of us, we might have healed from things of our past. Some of us, we might have identified, acknowledged, and addressed the things that took place in our lives. And some of us have healed throughout the years. But when you come across people who are still causing harm to you, because some people, right, they can know some things about you in your past, and they look at it as a weakness, and they prey on it. They prey on it. They know some things about you, and they're going to use it to their advantage. Some people in their 40s and 50s and 60 years of age are still walking around lying, cheating, manipulating. Some people have a twisted perspective of love because they never identified or acknowledged or addressed the things that happened to them that they experienced along the way. So they could be walking around with some unaddressed trauma. And while you are trying to love them in a healthy way, they have no knowledge of healthy and unhealthiness. This individual once asked me, was I bipolar? Because this person seen me as a loving, kind, caring, affectionate, forgiving, loyal, beautiful, smart person who loved unconditionally. But then you realize that these people, they don't change. Doesn't matter how much you love them. Doesn't matter how much you rationalize and justify their behaviors towards you. None of that matters. The whole time you're loving them, they're causing harm to you. They're injuring you. And when you realize that and you get triggered, that little girl comes out. That little girl who knows what it feels like to be abused. She comes out. She comes out swinging. She feels injured. She feels disrespected. She feels wounded. She's going to defend herself. She comes out. And then people see a different side of you. And instead of people realizing that it was their poor behavior towards you that caused you to change into this person they now knew nothing about, instead of them addressing their behaviors towards you, they call you crazy. They tell you you're off your meds. They ask you questions like, are you bipolar? Why? Because when you met me, I was a loving and caring person who saw the good in you or wanted to see the good in you. And because I was that person who stood by your side and held on tight and extended grace and mercy over and over and over until she realized that these people are never going to change. They don't change. The lying, the cheating, the manipulation. Some of those people will get up in your head and have you second guessing yourself and have you doubting yourself. This is why you need to stay plugged in to your higher power. Because instead of listening to these people who are causing you harm and walking around talking about they ain't do nothing to you and walking around talking about it's all you, you start to believe that stuff. I had to learn to listen to my higher power and not the lies that this world try to form me into believing about myself. There's this thing called discernment. The difference between God's truth and the world's lie. Anywho, this is not to toot my own horn, but I'm going to show you guys something. This is the gift that I got along the way. I'm not skinny, but I am not fat. I am 54 years old. I've gone through menopause. I take mental health meds. Anybody who knows anything about mental health meds knows that mental health meds are known to make you gain weight. So you got to be careful what these doctors prescribe you. Anywho, these are my teeth. This is my hair. It is not extensions. It's my real hair. This is the gift that I got along the way, because sometimes when people live a hard life, they tend to wear it. It tends to show. But God protected me from all that stuff. God kept me so I don't walk around looking like I've had a hard life. And I'm going to tell you where people get things twisted. I'm not only street smart because I grew up in the streets of Boston, but I also educated myself along the way. So I have the structured institution educations of schools. And I also know God and the Holy Bible. So yes, I'm a little bit hood and a little bit spiritual. Don't get it twisted. And people need to be careful who they're dealing with, because you never know who's walking around with some things that happen to them along the way, that your poor behavior may trigger them to become somebody you really don't know and don't want to know. I'm just trying to educate you guys on some stuff. Mental health awareness, mental health wellness, tied to education. Be well out there, people.